The desert sand still held the night's chill when Petty Officer Catherine Ashford knelt in the dirt with both hands on the pressure plate of an Iraqi anti-personnel mine. Dawn hadn't broken yet, just that gray pre-dawn light that makes everything look washed out and unreal. The kind of light that belongs to the space between sleeping and waking, between living and dying. The kind of light that doesn't judge, doesn't care, just illuminates whatever happens next. She was 22 years old, Navy EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. The job where one mistake doesn't give you a second chance to learn from it. The job where your hands are the only thing standing between life and death. Not just your life, everyone's. Kuwait, 1991. Operation Desert Storm. The ground war had been raging for 3 days, and the Iraqi forces had salted this entire valley with mines before retreating north. 3 Marine vehicles sat stuck on the only clear road, their occupants watching the ridgeline where enemy artillery had been falling for the past hour. Catherine didn't think about the artillery. The distant thunder of explosions meant nothing to her now. She didn't think about the 3 wounded Marines waiting for evacuation behind her, their blood soaking into sand that had seen blood for thousands of years. She didn't think about her family back in Virginia, her mother who'd cried when she enlisted, her father who'd saluted her with tears in his eyes. She thought about nothing except the wire beneath her left thumb. The detonator sat exposed now. Wires visible, timer still ticking, a Soviet-made PMN mine designed to take off legs at the knee. Simple, brutal, effective. The kind of weapon that didn't care about politics or gender, or anything except physics. Step on it, lose your legs. Touch the wrong wire, lose your life. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. Not when she'd qualified top of her EOD class. Not when she'd defused her first live device in training. Not now, with Iraqi artillery walking closer and enemy fighters working their way through the hills. Ashford, we got movement at 200 meters. The Marine sergeant's voice came through her earpiece. Calm, professional, but she could hear the edge underneath. The fear that he was too disciplined to show but couldn't quite hide. The knowledge that they were all exposed out here. Sitting ducks in an open field. You need to speed this up. Catherine didn't respond. Couldn't. Not when she was this close to the mechanism that wanted to kill her. Speaking would change her breathing. Changed breathing would change the steadiness of her hands. And right now, steady hands were the only thing keeping everyone alive. The first explosion had been 30 minutes ago. A lance corporal had stepped wrong, triggered a mine 50 meters from where she knelt now. The blast had thrown 2 Marines sideways, wounded one seriously. Shrapnel in the gut. The kind of wound that killed slowly if you didn't get help fast. The platoon sergeant, a tall man named Franklin Waverly, with gray already showing at his temples, despite being only 40 years old, had called for EOD support. His voice on the radio had been steady, controlled. The voice of a man who'd seen enough combat to know that panic killed faster than bullets. She'd been the closest asset, a 22-year-old woman in a job that most people thought was only for men, a woman who'd had to prove herself every single day since she'd put on the uniform. Now she knelt alone in an open field while unseen enemy fighters worked their way closer, and all she could think about was the wire. Ashford. Waverly's voice now, different tone, not asking her to hurry, not giving orders, just checking if she was still alive, just making sure the silence from her position didn't mean the worst. You good? 2 minutes, she said, soft, steady, the way you talk when you're holding something that wants to kill you. The way you talk when every syllable has to be measured, controlled, deliberate. She lifted the pressure plate, half an inch. Her breath stayed even. 4 count in, 6 count out. The rhythm her father had taught her when she was 12 and afraid of thunderstorms. The rhythm that had carried her through boot camp, through EOD school, through every moment that tried to break her. Then an inch. The wire released with a tiny click that sounded loud as thunder in the absolute silence of her concentration. She set the plate aside gently, reached for the timer, disconnected it with steady fingers that had never failed her. Safe. The mine sat disarmed in front of her like a gift she never wanted to receive. A small metal disc that could have killed a dozen men. Now just a piece of scrap. Clear, she said. Stood, brushed sand off her knees. Her heart rate hadn't changed. 72 beats per minute, same as always. same as it would be for the next 33 years of her career. She'd learned a long time ago that panic was just noise your body made when you forgot to breathe properly. Control the breath, control the fear. Control the fear, control the outcome, save lives. Simple math, the kind of math that most people never had to do. Waverly appeared beside her, tall, weathered, old enough to be her father. He looked at the mine, then at her, then back at the mine, like he was trying to reconcile what he'd just witnessed with what he thought he knew about the world. You just diffused that while we were taking contact? Yes, Sergeant. How old are you? 22. He stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his eyes. Not surprise anymore. Recognition. The look of a man who'd just seen something he would remember for the rest of his life. The look of a man who understood that he was witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. Franklin Waverly, he said, and I don't forget names or face or moments like this. You remember that, petty officer, because someday when people doubt you, and they will, you're going to need someone who saw what you could do before you had the rank to make them believe it. She didn't understand what he meant by that, not then. But 33 years later, standing in a warehouse in California watching a man she'd broken hit the mat in 2.8 seconds, she would remember this moment. She would remember the way Waverly looked at her, the way he nodded once, sharp and definitive, like he was filing something away for future reference. Another mine waited 70 meters ahead. She could see the disturbed earth, the slight discoloration where someone had dug recently. Iraqi engineers weren't subtle. They were efficient. They didn't need to be subtle when they had enough mines to cover every inch of ground. That one needs clearing too, she said. We can wait for another team. You've done enough. Catherine looked at him, met his eyes, let him see the steel that had always been there, that would always be there, that no amount of doubt or condescension or prejudice would ever wear away. I'm already here, Sergeant, and every minute we wait is another minute those wounded Marines don't get evac. So with respect, let me do my job. She walked forward. Behind her, Waverly turned to his Marines. One of them stood watching with wide eyes. Young, maybe 20 years old, first deployment, fresh camouflage and nervous hands, and the kind of face that hadn't yet learned what war actually looked like. Corporal Victor Hendricks. That girl's got ice in her veins, Waverly said. You remember her name, Bull? Catherine Ashford? You're going to be hearing it again. Hendricks nodded, watched the young woman walk toward the next mine like she was strolling through a park instead of a kill zone. He would remember her face, remember the way she moved, remember everything about this moment. And then, over the next 33 years, he would forget. The memory would blur and fade and eventually disappear entirely, buried under layers of other deployments, other faces, other moments of fear and violence and survival. He would forget the woman who saved his platoon, forget the steady hands and the calm voice and the courage that put everyone else's survival before her own. He would forget that she saved his life that day. He would forget that the shrapnel scar on his right shoulder came from the third mine, the one that detonated unexpectedly at the far end of the field while she was still working, the one that sent fragments flying in every direction, the one that would have killed him if he'd been standing 3 feet to the left. Catherine had heard that explosion, had felt the blast wave hit her back, had kept working anyway because the device in front of her didn't care about explosions behind her, because the mission didn't stop just because things got harder. Hendricks would forget everything except the vague sense that women didn't belong in combat, that they were political appointments, diversity hires, poster girls playing soldier. He would let that belief calcify over 3 decades, would let it poison his judgment, his leadership, his relationships with every female service member who ever served under or alongside him. And then, on a training base in California, he would try to prove his belief by pushing a woman into a mud-filled trench. He would learn, in 2.8 seconds, exactly how wrong he'd been. But that was 33 years away. For now, Corporal Victor Hendricks just stood in the Kuwait sand and watched a 22-year-old woman walk toward her second mine of the morning. She cleared it in 4 minutes, then a third, then a fourth. The sun rose higher. The artillery stopped. The enemy fighters pulled back, deterred by air support that finally arrived on station. By the time the dust settled, Catherine Ashford had neutralized 7 explosive devices, saved an entire Marine platoon, and earned a reputation that would follow her for the rest of her career. The young woman with ice in her veins, the one who never flinched, the one who did the job while everyone else was still trying to figure out if the job could be done. She didn't know it yet, but she was just getting started. 33 years later, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Ashford drove through the front gate at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado and thought about standards. The California morning was perfect. 62 degrees, clear sky, salt air mixing with helicopter fuel from North Island across the bay. A C-130 droned overhead, probably doing pattern work. The Pacific Ocean glittered in the distance, blue and endless, and indifferent to the struggles of the people who lived along its shores. Everything was exactly as it should be. She parked in the lot behind the main training facility. Sunrise was 40 minutes away. She'd been awake since 4, running through the day's schedule in her mind, preparing for what she knew was coming. 9 years as a Navy SEAL, the first woman to complete Bud/S and earn the Trident, the first to command a SEAL element in combat, the first to be awarded the Navy Cross for actions in Syria. 4 combat deployments, 273 missions, 0 failures, and they still wanted to see if she could handle a training course. She pulled her go bag from the trunk. Standard loadout, M4 carbine, M9 Beretta sidearm, plate carrier, helmet, 57 pounds of gear that she'd carried through Fallujah and Helmand and half a dozen places that officially never happened. The weight settled on her shoulders like an old friend, like the only friend that had never doubted her. Lieutenant Commander Catherine Ashford, 38 years old, 5'7", 145 pounds. A scar across her left forearm from a knife fight in an Iraqi compound. 3 insurgents, 1 knife, and her refusal to die. Another smaller scar at her hairline from shrapnel in Syria, the mission where she'd earned her Navy Cross. The mission where she'd learned that heroism was just another word for doing your job when your job was impossible. If you look close, you could see the marks that combat had left on her. Most people didn't look close. They saw a woman in uniform and made their assumptions. Saw blonde hair pulled back tight and thought secretary. Saw a face that could have been pretty if it smiled more and thought desk job. They never looked close enough to see the eyes that had watched men die, the eyes that had made the choices that kept other men alive, the eyes that had seen things that couldn't be unseen and had kept looking anyway. She checked her watch. 0547. 13 minutes until she needed to be anywhere. 13 minutes to do what she did every morning before anyone else arrived. The obstacle course stretched across 3 acres of California dirt. Trench sections filled with muddy water. Rope climbs 30 feet high. Cargo nets, wall jumps, barbed wire crawls. Everything designed to simulate combat movement under stress. Catherine walked to the starting line, set her gear bag down, checked her rifle. Then she ran, not for time, not for anyone watching, just for herself, just to remind her body what it was capable of, what it had always been capable of, what it would continue to be capable of until the day she died. 8 minutes, 34 seconds, her personal best. She'd hit it so many times now that her body knew the pace instinctively, knew exactly how fast to push, how hard to breathe, how to move through each obstacle with maximum efficiency. She finished covered in mud and barely winded. Heart rate elevated but controlled, lungs working but not straining. This was her standard, not the 11-minute requirement she would demand from her trainees, not the 10-minute goal she would set for excellence. Her standard was 8:34. Anything less was unacceptable. She showered in the empty locker room, changed into a fresh uniform, made her way to the headquarters building as the sun broke fully over the horizon. The conference room was already filling up when she arrived. 48 personnel. 24 SEALs on one side, 24 Marines on the other. Predictable. Tribal. Exactly what she was here to fix. She found Captain Hargrove in his office before the briefing. 51 years old, Navy 05, 28 years of service. A good officer who cared more about mission completion than politics. One of the few who'd supported her career from the beginning, who'd seen her potential before she'd had the record to prove it. "Commander Ashford," he said when she knocked. "Welcome aboard, sir." She stepped inside, closed the door. Permission to speak freely, always. Hendricks is going to be a problem. Hargrove leaned back in his chair. He'd been expecting this conversation. She could see it in his eyes. The resignation of a man who'd hoped the problem wouldn't exist but knew it would. You read his file. I read between the lines of his file. 3 complaints from female personnel over the past 8 years, 3 dismissals, all classified as personality conflicts, all suspiciously similar in their details. She paused. Pattern of behavior suggesting bias against women in leadership roles. The kind of bias that doesn't show up in official evaluations but makes life hell for anyone who has to work under him. Hargrove sighed. He's also one of the best combat instructors in the Marine Corps. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 24 years of distinguished service. Sir, I'm not questioning his competence. I'm predicting his behavior. He's going to test me, probably within the first week. He'll want to see if I'm real or if I'm just another political appointment. Hargrove studied her. And how do you plan to handle that? Catherine met his eyes, the same way she'd met pressure plates and IEDs and enemy fighters for the past 16 years. With calm, with calculation, with absolute certainty in her own abilities. By letting him test me, she said, and then showing him the results. The conference room held 60 people now, SEALs, Marines, support staff, all of them watching as Catherine walked to the front of the room. She didn't announce herself, didn't clear her throat, didn't do any of the things that nervous speakers did to buy time and establish presence. She just stood there, waited, let the silence do the work. Conversations died naturally. Silence spread like ripples on water, starting at the front and working its way back until the entire room was quiet, until every eye was on her, until the only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant drone of aircraft. Good morning, I'm Lieutenant Commander Catherine Ashford. For the next 12 weeks, I'm your commanding officer for this joint training evolution. She paused. Let that settle. Let them look at her and make their judgments. Let them see the woman standing at the front of the room and decide what they thought she was. Rank structure is simple. I give orders, you follow them. Branch doesn't matter here. Age doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is whether you can do the job. Another pause, longer this time. Standards for this course are non-negotiable. The obstacle course has an 11-minute time limit. If you can't make that time in full gear, you're not ready for combat. The marksmanship qualification is 90% or better. If you can't hit what you aim at, you're a liability to your team. Close quarters combat requires you to neutralize an opponent regardless of size advantage. If you can't do that, you don't belong in this program. She scanned the room, made eye contact with a dozen people, measured reactions, cataloged expressions, read the room the way she'd learned to read enemy positions, quickly, accurately, thoroughly. Her eyes stopped on one face in the back row. Master Gunnery Sergeant Victor Hendricks, 44 years old. Gray, showing at his temples. Weathered face from too many deployments and not enough sleep. Arms crossed, jaw tight. The posture of a man who'd already decided what he thought and wasn't interested in changing his mind. He looked back at her with something that wasn't quite hostility, more like skepticism, like he was waiting to see if she'd earned the right to stand at the front of the room, like he'd already decided she hadn't. She recognized that look, had been seeing it her entire career. The look that said, prove it. The look that said, I don't believe you. The look that said, women don't belong here, and nothing you do will change my mind. She'd proven it 100 times. She'd prove it again. Questions, Catherine said. A hand went up. Young SEAL, maybe 25, eager face, the kind of officer who still believed that asking good questions made you look smart rather than uncertain. Ma'am, what's the historical failure rate for this course? 23%. Another hand, Marine Corporal, older, more skeptical. What do you expect it to be under your command? 23%. I'm not here to make this easier or harder. I'm here to maintain the standard. The standard doesn't change based on who's in charge. That's why it's called a standard. Hendricks uncrossed his arms, leaned forward slightly. His voice carried across the room with the confidence of a man who'd spent 24 years giving orders instead of taking them. Ma'am, with respect, SEALs have different training methodology than Marines, different cultural approach. different tactical doctrine. How do you plan to bridge that gap? The room went quiet, not the comfortable quiet from before, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone recognizes a challenge being issued, the kind of quiet that precedes either conflict or capitulation. Catherine looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Not friendly, not hostile. Just the smile of someone who'd been asked a question she'd already answered 5 different ways in 5 different combat zones. By holding everyone to SEAL standards, Sergeant, if that's a problem for Marine personnel, they can request transfer back to their units. If it's a problem for SEAL personnel who don't think Marines can keep up, they can also request transfer. She let that hang in the air for 3 full seconds. But I won't lower the bar for anyone, and I won't tolerate anyone who thinks their branch makes them special. We're all operators. That's the only identity that matters here. Questions? No hands went up. Outstanding. Formation at 0800 for physical training. Full gear. Obstacle course. I'll demonstrate the standard, then you'll meet it. Dismissed. The obstacle course looked different with 48 people watching. The same mud, the same ropes, the same California sun, baking everything in a hard pack. But the atmosphere had shifted. Anticipation hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Everyone knew something was about to happen. No one knew exactly what. Catherine stood at the starting line in full combat gear. 57 pounds, helmet, plate carrier, M4 rifle, ammunition, water, medical supplies. More than regulation required, but she'd always carried extra. Those supplies had saved 3 lives on operations. She wasn't about to leave them behind for a training demonstration. The standard time for this course is 11 minutes, she said, voice carrying across the formation without being loud. That's 11 minutes to complete all obstacles. Full gear, weapons secured. If you drop your rifle, you fail. If you skip an obstacle, you fail. If you help another trainee, you both fail. This is individual assessment. She paused. Let them process that. I'm going to demonstrate the course first, alone. Watch the technique. Watch the pace. Watch how I move. Because this isn't about being fast. It's about being efficient. Speed without control is just wasted energy. And wasted energy gets people killed. Questions. A Marine near the back raised her hand. Young, maybe 23. Blonde hair pulled back tight. Athletic build. The kind of determined look that suggested she'd been underestimated her whole life and was tired of it. Private First Class Mackenzie Brennan. Catherine had memorized the roster. Knew every name, every background, every potential problem, and potential asset in her formation. Ma'am, what's your personal best time? 8 minutes, 34 seconds. But I'm not asking you to match my time. I'm asking you to meet the standard. A murmur ran through the formation. 8:34 was exceptional. 8:34 was the kind of time that made people question whether it was real. 8:34 was faster than most of the men in this formation could manage, and they knew it. Mackenzie Brennan's eyes went wide. Something shifted in her expression. Catherine recognized it immediately. Hope. The dangerous kind. The kind that could carry you through hell if you let it. The kind that whispered, maybe I can do this too. Chief Callahan, Catherine said. You have the timer. Bennett Callahan stepped forward. 33 years old, hospital corpsman chief, SEAL medic. He'd served under Catherine in Syria. Watched her take 2 rounds to the plate carrier and keep moving like nothing happened. If he had concerns about her ability to run this course, his face didn't show it. Ready when you are, ma'am. Catherine moved to the starting line. Checked her rifle. M4 carbine, magazine seated, chamber empty. Competition rules. She slung it across her back, adjusted her plate carrier, did a mental check of her body. Heart rate 72, steady, breathing normal, legs fresh, mind clear. Good enough. On your mark, Callahan said. He had a stopwatch in one hand. The entire formation watched. Some curious, some skeptical. Hendricks in the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. That was fine. Doubt was useful motivation. Set. Catherine dropped into a runner's stance. Weight forward, back straight, eyes on the first obstacle. Every muscle ready, every nerve aligned. Go. She exploded forward. Not sprinting, controlled acceleration. The first obstacle was a trench section 15 feet wide, 3 feet deep, filled with muddy water. The smart way was to go around. The standard way was through. She hit the edge at full speed and dropped to her belly. Rifle stayed on her back, elbows drove forward. Legs pushed. The mud wanted to grab her, wanted to slow her down, wanted to prove that physics was stronger than will. She didn't let it. 3 pulls, and she was across. Up and running before the mud had stopped dripping. Rope climb next. 30 feet straight up. No footholds, just rope and upper body strength and the knowledge that falling meant failing. She hit the rope at speed, locked her ankles in the J-hook technique she'd learned from Marine recon instructors during her first deployment. Legs bore 70% of the weight. Arms just guided. She climbed fast, smooth, hit the top in 12 seconds, touched the bell, descended in a controlled slide that left rope burn on her palms even through the gloves. Heart rate climbing to 90. Still good, still controlled. Cargo net, 20 feet high, 40 feet across. She didn't think about the top, just the next handhold. Then the next one, then the next one. Building a rhythm, letting the rhythm carry her over the toy down the other side. Keep moving, don't stop, don't think, just move. Wall jump. 8 feet high, no handholds, just momentum and upper body strength and the refusal to fail. She hit it running, planted one boot against the wall, used that momentum to reach the top, pulled herself over, dropped on the other side with knees bent to absorb impact. Her watch read 6 minutes, 47 seconds. Halfway done, heart rate pushing 100, breathing heavier now, but still controlled, still deliberate. The final section was the barbed wire crawl. 50 feet of mud under 3 rows of wire strung 18 inches off the ground. You went flat, you went slow. You kept your body down, or you caught wire in places you didn't want wire. Catherine dropped to her belly, rifle cradled in her arms, crawled, elbows, knees, push, pull, repeat. The mud soaked through her uniform, got in her mouth, her ears, her eyes. Didn't matter. Just keep moving. Never lift your head more than 6 inches. Never let the wire catch. She cleared the wire at 8 minutes, 28 seconds. Stood, checked her rifle. Still secured, no mud in the barrel. Good. Final sprint to the finish line. 8 minutes, 34 seconds. Exactly her personal best. She crossed the line and immediately transitioned to recovery breathing. 4 count in, 6 count out. Heart rate dropping back toward normal. Her uniform was soaked. Mud on her collar, in her hair, streaked across her face. She looked exactly like what she was. Someone who'd just completed a combat obstacle course at near record pace. Someone who'd earned every second of that time through years of training and discipline and refusal to accept anything less than excellence. She turned to face the formation. Not a word, not a smile. Just standing there covered in mud, waiting. The silence stretched for 5 full seconds. Then Callahan called out, 8 minutes, 34 seconds. That's 2 minutes, 26 seconds under standard. Still no one spoke. Catherine walked toward the formation. Stopped 10 feet away. Let them see her up close. Let them see that she wasn't breathing hard, wasn't showing strain, just standing there like she'd gone for a morning jog instead of crushing a course that would break most of them. Standard is 11 minutes, she said. Voice calm, steady. I expect you under 10. You have the rest of the day to make your attempts. Questions? No hands went up. Outstanding, line up by squad. You have until 1,700 hours to make your attempts. Anyone who can't meet the standard gets recycled. Move out. The incident happened on day 3, pre-dawn. The obstacle course looked different in the dark. Sodium lights buzzing overhead. Sprinklers had run overnight, leaving everything damp. Dark patches glistened on the ground where water had pooled. Catherine knelt by the rope anchor, checking equipment. The rope had frayed slightly during the previous day's runs. Not dangerous yet, but close. She marked it with chalk. Would need replacement before next week's evolution. She heard boots on gravel behind her. Heavy, deliberate, moving closer. She didn't turn around, just kept examining the anchor point. Her peripheral vision tracked the movement, tracked the approach. Hendricks. He stopped 10 feet back. Need backup, ma'am? Looks like technical work. His tone dripped something that wasn't quite respect, wasn't quite mockery, somewhere in between. The tone of someone who thought he'd already won an argument that hadn't started yet. Catherine stood, turned 45 degrees away from him, deliberately exposing her back, giving him clearance to walk past if that's what he intended. I'm fine, Sergeant. Just routine maintenance. She knelt again, checked another anchor point. Hendricks moved closer. Now he was directly behind her, maybe 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell coffee on his breath, close enough to be a problem if he wanted to be. Several Marines had gathered near the equipment shed, phones half out of pockets, like they were anticipating something, like they'd been told something might happen. Catherine's mind calculated without conscious thought. 3 witnesses, at least 2 with cameras, Hendricks positioned directly behind. Classic dominance display, using proximity as intimidation. It wouldn't work, but he didn't know that yet. Careful, ma'am, Hendricks said. That trench is deeper than it looks. Wouldn't want you to fall in. She stood again, turned away from him, took 2 steps toward the equipment table. Creating space. Creating clearance. Creating an out if he wanted to take it. He didn't take it. Women in combat is fine, Hendricks said. Louder now, making sure people heard. Women serving is fine. But women commanding combat? That's not about capability, ma'am. That's about politics, and we both know it. Catherine stopped walking, didn't turn around. This was the moment, the decision point. Walk away and prove she couldn't handle confrontation, or engage and give him the scene he wanted. Neither option was good, so she chose the third option. She calculated the distance behind her, the position of his feet based on his voice, the angle of approach, the force vector if he moved. Every variable mapped and measured in the space of half a second. Then she did nothing, just stood there with her back exposed, waiting. The shove came exactly when she expected it. 2 hands, high between her shoulder blades. Full force. The kind of push meant to humiliate, meant to dominate, meant to put her in her place. Catherine felt it coming, felt the shift in air pressure, felt his weight transfer, had half a second to dodge if she wanted to. She didn't dodge. She let it happen. Let his hands connect. Let the force transfer through her spine. Let momentum carry her forward over the edge, face first into the waist-deep muddy water. The impact was loud, wet, total. She hit with her full weight. Water splashed, mud sprayed, her rifle went under, her helmet filled, everything soaked instantly. The sound echoed across the training yard, then silence. 3 full seconds of absolute silence. Catherine stood slowly, methodically. The way you stand when every movement is deliberate, when nothing is accident. Mud dripped from her hair, streaked across her face, soaked through her uniform until it clung heavy and dark. Her clipboard floated nearby, waterlogged in ruin. She retrieved it, shook it once. Water ran off in sheets. Then she turned to face the formation. Her expression didn't change. No anger, no embarrassment, no reaction at all. Just the blank professional mask of someone doing a job. Training continues, she said, voice flat, steady, like she hadn't just been assaulted by a senior NCO in front of witnesses. Rope sequence. Begin. She walked toward the equipment table. Didn't wipe her face, didn't brush mud from her uniform. Just walked. Water squelching in her boots. Rifle dripping. Face completely neutral. Behind her, the laughter started. Scattered at first, then building. Phones came out. Recording openly now. No subtlety, just documentation. Damn, she went down hard. Seal Barbie takes a bath. Bet that water's cleaner now than before she hit it. Catherine reached the equipment table, set down the ruined clipboard, turned to the next team in line. Hoist sequence. Begin. Her voice never wavered. Across the training yard, Bennett Callahan started forward, anger visible in every line of his body. Tyler Morrison grabbed his arm. SEAL, Petty Officer First Class, 15 years of experience and the kind of instincts that came from watching people long enough to understand them. No, he just watch what she does. Catherine worked for another hour, soaked, muddy, clipboard barely legible. She gave orders, corrected form, timed sequences, did her job exactly as if nothing had happened. Because in her mind, nothing had, not yet. She'd just been given exactly what she needed. Evidence, witnesses, documentation, proof. Now she just needed to wait for the right moment to use it. In the back of the formation, standing near the equipment shed, an old man watched everything unfold. Franklin Waverly, 62 years old now, retired from active duty, but still consulting for special operations training programs. Gray hair, weathered face, the kind of presence that made younger men stand straighter without knowing why. He'd been there when Hendricks made his move, had seen the whole thing, could have intervened, could have stopped it before it happened. He hadn't. Instead, he'd watched Catherine Ashford rise from that trench covered in mud, her face completely blank, and continue doing her job like nothing had happened. He'd watched her work for another hour without a single sign of distress, without a single crack in her composure, without giving anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. And he'd smiled. Not because he enjoyed seeing her humiliated, but because he recognized exactly what she was doing. The same thing she'd done in Kuwait 33 years ago, when she'd knelt in the sand with her hands on a pressure plate while artillery fell around her. She was calculating, she was waiting, she was building towards something that Hendricks couldn't see coming. Waverly pulled out his phone, made a note, checked the time, then he walked away. He'd done his part, watched her reaction, confirmed what he'd always known about her. Catherine Ashford didn't react to provocation. She responded to it. And there was a difference. Hendricks thought he'd won something today. He had no idea how badly he'd just lost. The laundry bay wasn't built for quiet, but by evening it came close. Most of the day's training gear had cycled through. Overhead fluorescents hummed yellow. One flickered near the end dryer where someone had duct taped the timer into permanent operation. Catherine stood at the deep sink in the back corner. Sleeves rolled, collar unbuttoned, her mud-caked uniform bunched in both hands like something dead she dragged in from the field. She worked methodically, small circles with a bristle brush, heavy concentration on the shoulder and spine where she'd landed. The fabric had absorbed mud deep into the weave. Brown water circled the drain. She didn't scrub harder. She scrubbed smarter. Same pressure, same rhythm. Let the soap do the work. The door hissed open. Footsteps. Rubber soles on linoleum. Hesitant. Figured I'd find you here, ma'am. She didn't turn. Chief Callahan. Bennett Callahan stepped closer, still carrying his trauma kit off duty like someone might drop mid-sentence. He'd served under her in Syria. Watched her take 2 rounds to the plate carrier and keep moving. Knew her well enough to recognize when she was working through something. He stopped at the sink beside hers. Didn't wash anything, just stood there. Videos are everywhere, he said. Started as a joke. Now it's got 4 different captions. Some of them aren't jokes anymore. Catherine wrung out a sleeve, hung it over the overhead pipe, moved to the trousers. You could report him, Callahan said carefully. Captain Hargrove would have him in front of a court-martial board by Friday. Article 128, assault on a superior officer, open and shut. Why would I do that? Because he assaulted you, ma'am. He documented himself assaulting me. There's a difference, Callahan frowned. I don't follow. Catherine paused her scrubbing, looked at him for the first time. If I report it now, it becomes my word against his. He claims accident, claims I slipped, claims a dozen different things. Lawyers get involved. Process drags on. Meanwhile, the training program falls apart and everyone says I couldn't handle the pressure. But the video exists, multiple angles, multiple witnesses. They documented it for me. They did my job for me. So you're just going to let it go? No, I'm going to let them keep spreading it. Every share, every repost, every laugh, that's another piece of evidence. That's another witness who can't deny what they saw. She met his eyes. Proof has weight, Chief. Weight crushes noise. But you need enough weight first. Callahan watched her return to scrubbing. You're planning something. I'm planning to continue doing my job, that's all. He reached into his jacket, pulled out something wrapped in microfiber cloth. A phone, not hers, not his. Found this on the bleacher bench after the pit, he said. Forgotten, unlocked. Videos time-stamped and geotagged. Matches the main trench. Includes audio of Hendricks talking before the push. The part about women commanding being political. Catherine looked at the phone. You secured a Marine's phone. I secured evidence. I'm a medic. I can claim medical necessity if anyone asks. That's not how medical necessity works, Chief. No, ma'am. But it's how evidence preservation works. He set the phone on the edge of the sink. Do with it what you want, but if I were you, I'd want the original file. Unedited, untouched. Catherine picked up the phone, examined it. Marine Corps phone case. The lock screen showed a photo of Hendricks with two other Marines, all grinning, all confident. She tapped the throughs to the video files, found the one from this morning, played it with the volume low. Hendricks' voice came through the tiny speaker. Tinny, but clear. She'll request transfer by end of week. They all do. Women can't handle real military culture. Give her 3 days and she'll be gone. Catherine's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. He planned this, she said quietly. Before I even arrived, he planned to drive me out. Looks that way, ma'am. She wrapped the phone back in the cloth, tucked it into her towel pile. Thank you, Chief. You're not going to thank me when you hear the rest. Which is, Hendricks has been talking, telling people you'll request transfer by end of week, that you can't handle real operators, that this proves women aren't cut out for command in combat units. Catherine resumed scrubbing. What do you think, Chief? I think I've served under you when we were pinned in Syria and I took that femoral graze. You crossed a kill zone to pull me out. Took 2 rounds doing it. That's not someone who quits when pushed into mud. He paused. So yeah, something's coming. I just want to make sure we're ready. Catherine hung the last piece of uniform on the overhead pipe, turned to face him fully. Her hands were clean now. Her uniform would dry overnight. By morning, no evidence would remain except the videos circulating the base. And that phone. Unedited. Time-stamped. Perfect. Chief, you ever play chess? No, ma'am. My father taught me when I was 12. Best lesson he ever gave me. He said the key to winning isn't making the best move. It's making your opponent think they're winning until it's too late for them to realize they're not. Callahan nodded slowly. And Hendricks thinks he's winning. Hendricks thinks he's proven a point. He thinks he's shown everyone that women can't handle military culture, that we're too soft, too emotional, too political. She picked up the towel pile with the phone wrapped inside. He's right about one thing. I am political now. Just not the way he thinks. What are you going to do? I'm going to let him keep thinking he won. Right up until I show him what losing actually looks like. She walked toward the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Tomorrow at 0800, I'm going to submit a formal request to Captain Hargrove. Controlled demonstration. Training purposes. I'll need a volunteer instructor to demonstrate proper close quarters combat response. She turned back to look at him. I'm going to suggest Hendricks. Callahan smiled. Actually smiled. He'll say yes. Of course he will. His ego won't let him refuse. He thinks this is about me trying to prove myself. He doesn't realize it's about me teaching everyone else what standards actually mean. And if he doesn't take the bait, then I'll make the request official. Captain Hargrove will order it. Either way, Hendricks ends up on a mat with me in front of cameras, in front of witnesses, in front of everyone who watched that video. Ma'am, he's got 6 inches and 65 pounds on you. I know exactly what he's got, Chief, and I know exactly what I'm going to do with it. Syria, 2017. 7 years before the trench incident, the compound sat at the edge of a village that had no name on any official map. Mud walls, flat roofs, the kind of architecture that had existed in this part of the world for 3,000 years. The kind of place where empires had risen and fallen while the buildings stayed the same. Lieutenant Catherine Ashford crouched behind a wall with 5 other SEALs waiting for the signal to breach. The target was a high-value asset. Intelligence suggested he was holding a civilian hostage, an American contractor who'd been grabbed 2 weeks ago. The window for extraction was closing. Every hour increased the likelihood of execution. 6 operators. Intel suggested 15 to 20 hostiles inside. Maybe more. The math wasn't good, but the mission was clear. Get in. Get the hostage. Get out. Ashford, you've got point on the breach. Chief Morrison will cover left corridor. Callahan, you're on medical standby. Questions? No questions. They'd rehearsed this 100 times. Knew the building layout from satellite imagery and drone footage. Knew where the hostiles were likely positioned. Knew where the hostage was probably being held. What they didn't know was that the enemy had reinforcements staged 2 blocks away. 40 additional fighters. QRF responds faster than intelligence predicted. They wouldn't find that out until they were already inside. Go, Catherine moved first. Hit the door. Breaching charge blew the lock. She was through before the smoke cleared. M4 up. Scanning, moving. Contact left. 2 hostiles in the hallway. She dropped them both before they could raise their weapons. Center mass, double tap each. Clean shots. No hesitation. Clear left. Morrison's voice, moving right. The building smelled like sweat and fear and something else. Something chemical. The hostiles had been making something here. IEDs, probably. The smell of fertilizer and diesel fuel hung heavy in the air. Catherine pushed deeper, room by room, clearing corners, checking angles, moving with the kind of fluid precision that only comes from years of training and hundreds of operations. Hostage located, 2nd floor, northeast corner. Morrison had found him. Catherine redirected, took the stairs 2 at a time. The hostage was alive, bound to a chair, blindfolded, gagged, but breathing, conscious, responsive. His face was bruised, his clothes torn, but he was alive. Package secured, moving to exfil. That's when everything went wrong. Contact, contact, contact. Multiple hostiles approaching from the south. Heavy weapons, they've got technical incoming. The reinforcements, 40 fighters, coming fast. Catherine grabbed the hostage, cut his bindings, got him moving. Callahan, status, taking fire from the courtyard. Morrison is hit, femoral graze. He's mobile but bleeding. How bad? Bad enough. We need exfil now. Bird is 6 minutes out. Can you hold? 6 minutes, an eternity in combat. With a wounded man, with 40 hostiles closing in, with ammunition running low and no reinforcements coming. We hold, Catherine said. No one gets left behind. They made it to the ground floor, found Morrison propped against a wall, tourniquet already applied, face pale but alert. Blood pooled beneath him. The wound was worse than he'd let on. Can you move? I can shoot. Then shoot. The next 4 minutes were chaos. Controlled case, the kind that training prepared you for, but chaos nonetheless. Catherine held the eastern approach with 2 other SEALs. Morrison covered the door despite his wound. Callahan worked on the hostage, who'd taken shrapnel during the breach. Hostile down, reloading. 2 more from the north. I've got them. Where's that bird? 4 minutes, too long. They were running low on ammunition. Morrison was fading. The hostage was stable but needed proper medical attention. Catherine made a decision. Cover me. Ma'am, I said cover me. She broke from cover, ran across the courtyard toward the eastern wall. 30 meters of open ground with bullets snapping past her head. She reached the wall. Found what she was looking for. A technical, mounted machine gun. 2 dead hostiles beside it, killed by her team's initial fire. She climbed up, grabbed the gun, swung it around, opened fire. The effect was immediate. The heavy rounds chewed through the approaching fighters, drove them back, gave her team the breathing room they needed. Bird inbound, 60 seconds. The helicopter came in hot, door gunners laying suppressing fire. The team loaded. Morrison first because he was wounded, then the hostage, then Callahan, then the others. Catherine was last. She took a round to the plate carrier as she ran for the bird. Then another. The impact staggered her, but didn't stop her. She reached the helicopter. Callahan grabbed her arm, pulled her in. Go, go, go. The bird lifted, banked hard. Bullets pinged off the fuselage. Then they were clear, rising into the night sky, alive. Catherine sat on the floor of the helicopter, breathing hard. 2 fresh dents in her plate carrier where the rounds had hit. Bruises forming underneath that would turn spectacular colors over the next few days. Morrison looked at her from his stretcher. You crossed a kill zone for me. You would have done the same, maybe. But I didn't have to, because you did it first. She didn't respond, just sat there, breathing, processing. They'd completed the mission. rescued the hostage, saved Morrison, lost no one. But she'd learned something that night, something important. When the moment came, when the decision had to be made, she didn't hesitate. She moved. She acted. She did what needed to be done regardless of the risk to herself. That was the standard. Not the time on an obstacle course. Not the accuracy on a shooting range. The standard was what you did when everything went wrong and people's lives depended on your choices. 7 years later, standing in a warehouse in California, she would remember this moment. Remember the feeling of rounds hitting her armor. Remember the choice she'd made, and she would make the same choice again. The evening before the demonstration, Catherine sat at the desk in her quarters, laptop open. The room was small, Spartan, bed, desk, footlocker, everything regulation, everything in its place. She opened her email, typed, to Captain Hargrove, J. From Lieutenant Commander Ashford, K. Subject, Training Correction Demonstration Request. Sir, recent events during training have demonstrated a need for instructional correction regarding proper close quarters combat response to unexpected physical contact from behind. Request authorization for controlled CQB demonstration. Warehouse Alpha. Day 4, 0600 hours. Demonstration will cover proper defensive techniques, momentum reversal, and threat neutralization. All movements will be conducted within regulation parameters per Navy Piers 15560D. Medical team will be on standby. Event will be recorded for training archive purposes. Request one volunteer Marine instructor to assist with demonstration. Suggest Master Gunnery Sergeant Hendricks, given his extensive combat experience, and expressed interest in evaluating SEAL combat methodologies. Respectfully submitted, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Ashford. She read it twice, changed nothing. Hit send. The email disappeared into the network. Would reach Hargrove within seconds. He'd probably read it tonight, probably approve it before morning formation. Because Hargrove was smart enough to recognize what this was. Not revenge, correction. Catherine closed the laptop, stood, walked to the small mirror bolted to the wall. Her reflection stared back. 38 years old, scar on the forearm, smaller scar at the hairline, face that had seen things and chosen not to talk about them. She lifted her shirt, examined her ribs. The impact from the push had left bruising along the right side, purple spreading into yellow, tender to touch, but not debilitating. She'd taken worse hits and kept fighting. She lowered the shirt, met her own eyes in the mirror. Tomorrow you train, she said quietly. Day after tomorrow you teach. Her phone buzzed. Email notification from Captain Hargrove, J. Subject, retraining correction demonstration. Request approved. Warehouse Alpha, Day 4, 0600 hours. Master Gunnery Sergeant Hendricks has been notified and has volunteered to assist. Medical team authorized. Recording equipment confirmed. All safety protocols will be observed. Good luck, Commander. Catherine set the phone down. No smile, no satisfaction. Just the calm that came from knowing the pieces were moving exactly as planned. The CQB training facility was empty when she arrived. Off training hours. Just padded mats and heavy bags and the smell of sweat that never quite left. The kind of place where people learned to hurt other people. The kind of place where theory became practice. She changed into training gear, compression shorts, sports bra, bare feet. The less clothing, the less someone could grab. She stood at center mat, closed her eyes, visualized. Hendricks would come from behind. She knew this. He'd recreate the push. His ego wouldn't allow anything else. He'd want to prove the first time wasn't luck. The attack would come high, between the shoulder blades. Full force meant to drive her forward. She visualized the counter, frame by frame, impact incoming, drop 6 inches, full squat. His hands hit air. Momentum carries him forward. Catch his right wrist with left hand. Pivot 180 degrees clockwise. Use his momentum plus rotational force. Lock his elbow with right hand. Sweep his lead leg. 3 points of control. Wrist, elbow, ankle. He falls. She opened her eyes, began drilling the movement. Solo at first, just the motion, the drop, the spin, the imaginary arm lock. She did it 50 times, each time faster, each time smoother, each time closer to perfect. Then she added the heavy bag, used it to simulate resistance, grabbed it, spun it, dropped it. The bag weighed 80 pounds, close enough to human weight, close enough to realistic. After 200 repetitions, her shoulders burned. Her legs shook slightly, but the movement was automatic now, involuntary. The body would do it without thought. She checked her watch. 22:30 hours. Time to sleep. Tomorrow would be Kong. The day after would be longer. But when it was over, everyone would understand what standards actually meant. The warehouse door was open. Inside, people were already gathering, SEALs on one side, Marines on the other. The tribal instinct ran deep. Even now, even knowing what was coming. 80 people, more than expected. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the woman who'd been pushed into the mud faced the man who'd pushed her. Catherine entered. Didn't look at the crowd, just walked to the equipment table where Captain Hargrove stood with a tablet. "Commander, everything ready?" "Yes, sir." Medical team staged and standing by. Recording equipment confirmed. 3 angles, all official per regulation. Outstanding. Hargrove looked at her for a long moment. Rules of engagement. Contact sparring. Takedowns permitted. No strikes to head, neck, or groin. First person pin for 3 seconds ends the round. Standard CQB demonstration protocol. Catherine nodded. And Hendricks agreed to this? He volunteered, sir. Did he understand what he was volunteering for? Catherine met his eyes. He thinks he does. He's wrong. But he'll learn. The crowd was growing. 80 people now. More coming through the doors. This was bigger than expected. Bigger than planned. That was fine. More witnesses meant more education. Catherine saw Mackenzie Brennan standing front row. Notebook out, pen ready. The young Marine private who'd been thinking about quitting on day 1. She'd stayed. She'd fought through. And now she was here to watch what happened when someone fought back the right way. Their eyes met. Catherine gave the slightest nod. Brennan nodded back. Then Hendricks walked in. 15:55 hours, 5 minutes early. Confident stride, rolled sleeves. That same swagger he'd carried since the day he'd pushed her into the mud. He saw Catherine. Grinned. Actually grinned. He thought this was going to be easy. Thought his size and strength would carry the day. Thought she'd made a mistake requesting this demonstration. He had no idea what was coming. None at all. Captain Hargrove stepped to center floor. "Attention. This is a controlled demonstration per Training Regulation 405.3. Purpose, instructional training in close quarters, combat responses." He paused. Let the room settle. Participants: Lieutenant Commander Catherine Ashford, United States Navy SEALs. Master Gunnery Sergeant Victor Hendricks, United States Marine Corps. Medical team is standing by. This demonstration will be recorded for official training archives. Are there any questions before we begin? Silence. Outstanding. Participants, center mat. Catherine walked forward. Heart rate 72, same as always. Breathing normal, mind clear. Hendricks walked from the opposite side. Still grinning, still confident. They faced each other at center mat. The size difference was obvious. He was 6'2", 210 pounds. She was 5'7", 145 pounds. In a pure strength contest, he'd win. But this wasn't a strength contest. This was chess, and she was 3 moves ahead. Rules are simple, Hargrove said. Contact sparring. Takedowns permitted. No strikes to head, neck, or groin. First pin held for 3 seconds ends the round. Medical team will stop the demonstration if anyone is injured. Understood? Yes, sir. Catherine's voice was calm. Yes, sir, Hendricks echoed. Begin. Hendricks circled left, hands up. Traditional fighting stance. Testing her reaction time. Looking for openings. Catherine stood center, neutral stance. Hands low, weight balanced. She didn't circle, didn't chase, just waited. He reached for her collar, standard grappling opening. She let him get the grip, let him pull her forward slightly, let him think he had control. Then she broke his base with a subtle weight shift. He stumbled, released, reset. His confidence flickered. just for a second, then came back. He tried again, this time going for a double leg takedown. Shooting low, going for her legs. Catherine sprawled, hips back, weight on his shoulders, basic wrestling defense. She could have finished it here, could have locked a front choke, could have ended it. She didn't. She released. Step back. Something wrong, ma'am? Hendricks asked. You keep backing off. Just measuring, Sergeant. Continue. The crowd murmured, SEALs watching intently, Marines getting nervous. This wasn't going how anyone expected. Tyler Morrison leaned toward Bennett Callahan. She's not trying to win yet. What's she doing? Reading him. Every time he moves, she's learning his patterns, his tells, his preferred attacks. Why not just finish it? Because she needs him to throw the specific attack. The one from the trench. That's the teaching moment. Hendricks came again, more aggressive now, tried for a bear hug from the front. Committed fully. Catherine dropped under his arms, got behind him, back control for 2 seconds. Could have finished it. Rear naked choke. 3 seconds and he'd be unconscious. She released, stepped away. Hendricks spun, breathing harder now, frustration building. You're running. No, Sergeant, I'm waiting. Waiting for what? Catherine turned her back to him. Deliberate, obvious, waiting for you to show me what you did at the trench. The technique from behind. Demonstrate it properly so we can all learn. The warehouse went silent. Everyone understood what she was asking. Everyone knew what would happen if he did it. Hendricks stared at her back. Ma'am, that was an accident. Then show me the proper form. Or was it intentional? Because if it was intentional, and you decline now. She let the implication hang. The room waited. Every eye on him. Then Tyler Morrison's voice cut through from the SEAL side. Sergeant, respectfully. If you don't demonstrate it, everyone here will assume you know it was assault and you're afraid to admit it on camera. Hendricks spun toward Morrison. I'm not afraid of anything, petty officer. Then prove it, Catherine said quietly. Demonstrate the proper technique. Or decline and confirm what everyone's thinking. The trap snapped shut. Pride, ego, witnesses, cameras. He couldn't refuse without looking guilty. Couldn't admit guilt without consequences. Hendricks's jaw tightened. His pride wouldn't let him refuse. His ego wouldn't let him back down. Not in front of everyone, not on camera. Fine. You want it? Here it is. He backed away, turned, same motion as the trench, then pivoted fast. Two-handed shove, high between the shoulder blades. Full force, exactly identical to before. And Catherine had been waiting for exactly this moment for 72 hours. She dropped 6 inches. Perfect squat. His hands hit air above her shoulders. Momentum carried him forward. Off balance, committed, no recovery possible. She caught his right wrist with her left hand. Iron grip. He was already falling. She pivoted 180 degrees clockwise. Used his momentum plus her rotation. Physics and timing in 1,000 repetitions until it was automatic. His arm extended full length. She locked his elbow with her right hand. 3 pounds of pressure from dislocation. She swept his lead leg with her right foot. Ankle support gone. 3 points of control. Wrist, elbow, ankle. He went down hard, back flat. Air exploded from his lungs. The mat absorbed some impact. Not enough. The shock was total. Catherine dropped her right knee to his solar plexus. Light pressure, not to damage, to control. She maintained the wrist lock with both hands. The entire sequence took 2.8 seconds. The warehouse was dead silent. Not a breath, not a movement. Just the mechanical whir of 3 cameras recording every detail. Catherine leaned in, voice low enough for him to hear clearly, loud enough for the front row and the microphones. This is why you never attack from behind, Sergeant. Because you don't know what your opponent has been trained to do. And you clearly didn't know I trained with Yamam. Israeli counterterrorism. They teach you to neutralize attacks, not avoid them. She paused. Any questions? Hendricks stared up at her. Shock. Disbelief. The beginning of understanding. She stood, extended her hand, professional courtesy. He didn't take it. She dropped her hand, stepped back, turned to Captain Hargrove. Sir, demonstration complete. All techniques executed within regulation parameters. Request to continue normal training schedule. Granted. Then from the back of the crowd, a figure stepped forward. Tall, gray-haired, 62 years old. The kind of presence that made everyone else seem smaller. Franklin Waverly. He walked onto the mat. Every eye followed him. He stopped in front of Hendricks, who was climbing slowly to his feet. Master Gunnery Sergeant, attention! Hendricks snapped to automatically. 30 years of conditioning. Waverly stared at him for a long moment, then spoke. Not loud, not angry, just factual. Kuwait, 1st Marine Division. I was your platoon sergeant. You were Corporal Hendricks then. Fresh from Lejeune, he paused. You remember what I taught you about judging operators? Hendricks' voice came out rough. Yes, Gunny. Repeat it. A pause, then barely audible. Never judge an operator by their branch, gender, or appearance. Judge them by their competence. And if you judge wrong, be man enough to admit it. Louder, Master Gunnery Sergeant. Hendricks' voice strengthened. Never judge an operator by their branch, gender, or appearance. Judge them by their competence. And if you judge wrong, be man enough to admit it. Waverly nodded once. Then he reached for Hendricks' shoulder, pulled back the collar of his uniform, exposed a faded scar. Shrapnel wound, old but still visible. You know where you got this? Hendricks frowned. Kuwait. Mine detonated at the edge of the field. I was caught in the blast radius. You were, Waverly agreed. And you know who was defusing the mines that day? Who kept working even after that blast? Who cleared 7 devices so your platoon could move forward? Hendricks didn't answer. Waverly turned, pointed at Catherine. Her, Petty Officer Catherine Ashford. 22 years old. She saved your life that day, Bull, and you forgot. You forgot everything except your prejudice. The silence that followed was absolute. Hendricks stared at Catherine, something shifting in his eyes. Recognition, horror, shame. She saved me? She saved all of you. And 33 years later, you pushed her into a mud trench because you thought women didn't belong in combat. Waverly stepped back. I taught you better than that. Now she's teaching you again. Don't forget this time. He turned to Catherine. Came to attention, saluted. Commander, permission to continue training. Catherine returned the salute. Granted, Gunnery Sergeant. Waverly walked off the mat, through the crowd, out the door. He'd said what needed saying. His job was done. The conference room smelled like ozone and dry erase markers. Windowless, overhead lighting flat and clinical. A single steel table stretched the length of the space, flanked by chairs that made too much noise when pushed back. At the head, Captain Hargrove flipped open a slim black folder marked with today's date and the emblem of the Joint Training Oversight Council. A JAG officer sat beside him. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Voss, 39 years old, 16 years Navy legal. She prosecuted enough cases to recognize when one was open and shut. Across the table sat Hendricks and 2 Marines who'd been nearest him during the trench incident. They weren't laughing anymore. Their posture had shifted from relaxed defiance to rigid compliance. Catherine sat at the far end, back straight, uniform neat, arms resting gently on the table's edge. Franklin Waverly stood against the back wall, observer status. Technically unnecessary, but Hargrove had requested him. Sometimes you needed the voice of institutional memory. Hargrove didn't open with questions. He turned on the screen. First, the trench clip. No edits, no cuts, just the original file from the confiscated phone. Hendricks' voice. Clear, unmistakable. Women in combat is fine. But women commanding combat? That's not about capability, ma'am. That's about politics. Then the shove, then the splash, then the moment Catherine rose. Mud soaking her collar, her voice calm, flat, professional. Training continues. The room stayed silent. No one looked away. No one shifted. Then Hargrove cued the second clip. The warehouse footage, multi-angle, center floor, Hendricks' recreation of the push, Catherine's drop, the spin, the throw, the pin. 2.8 seconds. Her words echoed through the audio. This is why you never attack from behind, Sergeant. Hargrove paused the playback just as she turned away. He looked at Hendricks. Master Gunnery Sergeant, do you believe this demonstration was exaggerated or misrepresented in any way? Hendricks hesitated. 2 seconds. No, sir. That's what happened. And the initial incident at the trench, the push, was that accidental? Longer pause. 5 seconds. Hendricks' jaw worked, his hands flexed on the table. No, sir. It was intentional. Why did you do it? I wanted to test her, sir. Wanted to see if she'd react emotionally. Wanted to prove she couldn't handle military culture. And did you prove that? Hendricks looked down. No, sir. I proved I couldn't handle being wrong. Voss made a note on her tablet. Hargrove closed the folder. Master Gunnery Sergeant, you physically assaulted a superior officer during a training evolution. Article 128, Uniform Code of Military Justice. Assault in the presence of multiple witnesses with video documentation. He paused. Under normal circumstances, this would result in court-martial, reduction in rank, possible brig time, dishonorable discharge. Do you understand the severity? Yes, sir. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Hendricks looked up, met Hargrove's eyes. No defense, sir. I was wrong. I allowed personal bias to cloud my judgment. I disrespected Commander Ashford based on her gender, not her record. I disgraced my uniform and the Marine Corps. His voice cracked slightly. I learned today that she saved my life in Kuwait 33 years ago. I forgot everything except my prejudice. He straightened. I request maximum punishment, sir. The room went quiet. Voss stopped typing. Even Hargrove paused. Catherine had been listening without expression. Now she spoke. First time since entering the room. Sir, request to address the board. Granted, Catherine stood, not because it was required, because it gave weight to what came next. Sir, court-martial serves no purpose here. The statement hung in the air like something physical. Master Gunnery Sergeant Hendricks is a decorated Marine with 24 years of distinguished service. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, multiple combat deployments. That record doesn't vanish because of one mistake, a serious mistake. But one mistake, she paused, let that settle. What happened at the trench was assault, criminal act. What happened in the warehouse was education, professional correction. The question before this board isn't whether to punish Sergeant Hendricks. It's whether punishment achieves the desired outcome. Voss leaned forward. Commander, what outcome are you seeking? Behavioral correction, ma'am. Institutional change. She turned to face Hendricks directly. If we court-martial Sergeant Hendricks, we remove one problem. But we don't solve the problem. The problem isn't him specifically. It's the assumption that women in command positions are political appointments rather than merit-based selections. That assumption persists regardless of what happens to one Marine. But if we correct his behavior and integrate him into the solution, we prove the system works. We prove that the military handles these situations professionally. We prove that standards apply equally. And we prove that justice is restorative, not just punitive. Hargrove studied her. What are you proposing? Formal letter of reprimand, permanent record, temporary suspension from solo instruction, mandatory training and integrated unit leadership. She paused. And one additional requirement, which is? Catherine's voice didn't change. Didn't soften, just stated facts. He becomes my assistant instructor for the remainder of this training evolution. If Sergeant Hendricks believes standards are being lowered for diversity, he'll help me prove they're being raised for everyone. He'll personally mentor Private Brennan. And when she graduates top of her class, which she will, he'll shake her hand and acknowledge that competence isn't determined by gender. The silence was absolute. Voss stared. Hargrove blinked twice. Even Waverly shifted against the back wall. Hendricks looked at Catherine like she'd spoken a foreign language. Ma'am, why would you? After what I did. Catherine met his eyes. Sergeant, I could destroy your career, but that doesn't fix the problem. 24 years of experience and a decorated combat record shouldn't be wasted on bitterness. You made a mistake. Learn from it. Teach others not to make it. That's how we actually change things. Hendricks's voice came out rough. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your mercy. This isn't mercy, Sergeant. This is strategy. She paused. You're a good Marine who's been fighting the wrong enemy. Now fight the right one. Mediocrity. Help me raise the standard for everyone. 6 months later. Forward operating Base Chapman. Eastern Afghanistan. Mountains rising in every direction. The kind of terrain that swallowed armies and spit out bones. Commander Catherine Ashford reviewed the operation plan one final time. 8-person SEAL element. Joint operation with Marine Force Recon. The mission? Extract a high-value target from a compound 8 kilometers north. The Marine Force Recon commander, Captain Ellis, looked at the tactical map. Commander Ashford, our intelligence suggests 20-plus hostiles. Recommend Marine element takes point on breach. Catherine shook her head. Negative. SEALs breach. Marines provide perimeter security and QRF. We've done this 200 times. Trust the process. Ellis nodded. No argument, no ego, just professional acceptance. Standing behind him, wearing the insignia of an assistant instructor temporarily attached to the operation, was Master Gunnery Sergeant Victor Hendricks. 6 months of working alongside Catherine. 6 months of watching her lead. 6 months of learning what he should have understood 33 years ago. He didn't speak, just listened, learned, did his job. The mission launched at 2300 hours. Helicopter insertion, fast rope deployment. The compound appeared exactly as intelligence suggested. The breach was textbook. 4 minutes from insertion to target secured. Clean, professional, no casualties. Then enemy reinforcements arrived. 40 fighters, heavy weapons. QRF response faster than predicted. Catherine's element was pinned, taking fire from 3 sides. 2 Marines wounded, 1 SEAL, all mobile but bleeding. Callahan's voice came through comms. Ma'am, casualties stable, but we need exfil. ETA on bird? 6 minutes. Catherine calculated. Same math as Syria, same equation. Different country, same answer. We hold here. Form defensive perimeter. No one gets left behind. The firefight lasted 7 minutes. When the helicopters arrived, everyone loaded, everyone extracted, everyone came home. But not without cost. Hendricks had taken shrapnel during the final push. Right shoulder, the same shoulder that bore the scar from Kuwait 33 years ago. He'd gone down, pinned behind cover, unable to move without exposing himself to fire. Catherine had seen him fall, and without hesitation, she'd done exactly what she'd done in Kuwait, exactly what she'd done in Syria. She'd crossed the kill zone, taken fire, grabbed him, dragged him to cover. 2 more rounds hit her plate carrier during the run. The familiar impact, the bruises that would bloom over the next few days. She'd saved his life. Again. On the helicopter, flying back to base, Hendricks looked at Catherine. 33 years ago, he said, you saved me in Kuwait. I forgot. His voice was rough. From pain. From something else. Today makes twice. I owe you 2 lives. Catherine checked his bandage. The bleeding had stopped. He'd need surgery, but he'd survive. You don't owe me anything, Sergeant. Just teach what you learned to the next generation. That's all any of us can do. He nodded slowly. I will, ma'am. I swear I will. 3 years later, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California. Morning formation, new class, 50 students, 45% female, highest ratio in program history. Standards unchanged, actually slightly higher than 3 years ago. Pass rate consistent with historical average. Corporal Mackenzie Brennan stood at the front of the classroom. No longer private, no longer uncertain, now an instructor, teaching close quarters combat to the next generation. The technique I'm about to show you was developed by Israeli counterterrorism units. It's designed to neutralize attacks from behind using the attacker's momentum against them. She demonstrated the drop, the spin, the throw, the same technique Catherine had used 3 years ago, now part of standard curriculum. In the back row, a retired contractor watched. Victor Hendricks, 47 years old now, gray hair, weathered face, teaching leadership ethics twice a week. His opening to every new class was identical. 33 years ago, I was saved by a woman I later forgot. 3 years ago, I pushed that same woman into a mud trench because I thought women didn't belong in combat. He paused. Let them see his shame. Let them understand it was real. Commander Catherine Ashford could have ended my career. Instead, she gave me education. Today, I'm here to pass that education forward. Lesson 1. Never judge an operator by anything except their ability to do the job. Everything else is noise, and noise gets people killed. Across the base in the group commander's office, Captain Catherine Ashford reviewed training reports. Photos on her wall told the story. Kuwait, 1991. Young Petty Officer Ashford with EOD team. Syria, 2017. Catherine's SEAL element after extraction. Afghanistan, 2024. The team that came home. Present day, Commander Ashford with her command staff. She'd been promoted 6 months ago. Would take command of Naval Special Warfare Group 2 next month. Captain rank would follow. '06, the trajectory was clear. But rank didn't matter, only mission completion. A knock on the door. Enter. Captain Hargrove stepped inside. Retired now, but still consulting. Commander, congratulations. Your promotion to '06 is confirmed. Official ceremony next Friday. Thank you, sir. One more thing. Corporal Brennan has applied for SEAL training. BUD/S. She lists you as primary reference. Catherine set down her pen. What's the holdup? No holdup. She's approved. Starts next month. First female Marine to cross over to SEAL pipeline. She'll make it. You seem certain. I am. Because I taught her the same thing Waverly taught me 33 years ago. Standards don't care about who you are, only whether you can meet them, and Brennan can. The obstacle course. 0530. Before formation. The same trench where Hendricks had pushed her 3 years ago. Catherine stood alone at the edge, looking at the muddy water, remembering the impact, the silence, the choice she'd made in that moment. Document, don't react. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. Morning, ma'am. Mackenzie Brennan, sergeant now, instructor, soon to be SEAL candidate. Morning, Mac. I come here sometimes, Brennan said. To this spot to remember. Remember what? That day, watching you stand up covered in mud, not saying a word. I was about to quit, ma'am, right then. I decided. Then I saw you keep working, like nothing happened. And I thought, if she can do that, what the hell is my excuse? Catherine turned, looked at her. You stayed because of that? I stayed because you showed me what standards actually mean. Not talking about them, living them, silence, just the two of them. The trench, the rising sun. Mac, you ship to BUD/S next month. It's going to be harder than anything you've done. I know, ma'am. You're going to want to quit, probably in week 3. Cold, exhausted, instructors in your face. You'll think you made a mistake. Yes, ma'am, when that moment comes, I want you to remember something. Not this trench, not me, not inspiration. Catherine paused. I want you to remember that quitting is a choice, continuing is a choice, and the only difference between them is deciding which one you can live with. Brennan stood straighter. I won't quit, ma'am. I know. That's why you'll make it. Catherine walked past her toward the headquarters building, stopped, turned back. Mac, when you graduate BUD/S, and you will, the instructors are going to ask what kept you going. Don't mention me. Don't mention this training. Tell them the truth, which is, you kept going because you decided failing wasn't acceptable. That's the only answer that matters. Yes, ma'am, Catherine continued walking. Behind her, Brennan stood at the edge of the trench, looking at the water, seeing not mud, but possibility. 3 years ago, a woman had been pushed into this trench to prove she didn't belong. Today, that same woman commanded Naval Special Warfare Group 2. Tomorrow, another woman would enter BUD/S because she'd learned that belonging wasn't given. It was earned. The cycle continued. The standard remained. And somewhere in San Diego, Franklin Waverly's phone rang. He answered, listened, smiled. Kate, the news just came through. Brennan made it. Graduated BUD/S, top 15%. On the other end, Catherine Ashford stood in her office, looking at the photo from Kuwait. 22 years old, hands steady, heart rate 72. The same woman who'd saved a platoon, who'd never flinched, who'd taught everyone who doubted her exactly what standards meant. Tell her I'm proud, Catherine said. She knows, ma'am. They all know. Waverly paused. You changed things, Kate. Not just for her, for everyone who comes after. That's the legacy. Catherine looked out her window. The obstacle course was visible in the distance. New class running drills, mixed gender, all struggling equally, all pushing forward. That's not legacy, she said, that's the standard. Same thing. Some people meet it, some people are it. He paused. You're it, Kate. Always have been. Fair winds. The call ended. Catherine set down the phone. Outside, the sun rose over Coronado. Another day, another class, another opportunity to prove that competence was the only metric that mattered. She grabbed her gear bag, walked out the door, and got back to work. Because that was the standard, and the standard never changed.